Okay, so today we're diving into something that I think is pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
It's the Chiatzi test.
Yeah.
And our listeners specifically asked about this one.
Okay.
And I have to admit, I am very curious about this one too.
Yeah, it's a fun one.
Because it just seems like it's so simple,
It is.
but you get so much information from it. So I kind of feel like it's like we're
That's a good way to put it.
like microscopic detectives or something.
Yeah.
You know, we're like looking for these little clues to tell us what kind of bacteria we're dealing with.
Very much like that, yeah.
Really?
It's a classic microbiology technique for a reason.
Yeah, so let's break it down.
Uh-huh.
What is this test all about?
So basically the Chiatzi test, it's all about figuring out how bacteria eat,
Okay.
what they like to eat or what they don't like to eat,
Their food preferences.
their food preferences, and what waste they make when they eat.
Okay, I can get behind that.
Right. So we can tell a lot about bacteria just by the food they eat and what kind of poop they make.
Okay. I like how you're not shying away from the poop analogy.
Well, you know it's real.
It's true.
It's real.
That's what it is.
It's biology.
Okay, so we've got this agar slant.
Right.
And it's in, like, I'm picturing a test tube. Is that right?
It is a test tube.
With this slant of agar in it.
Yes.
And this is where the bacteria grow.
That's where the bacteria grow, but the agar itself is special.
Oh,
It's not just any old agar.
What's so special about this agar?
Well, first of all, it's got a funny name.
Is it?
Chiatzi agar.
Chiatzi.
Chiatzi agar.
Okay.
And the reason why it has all those letters is because it's testing for a lot of different things.
Okay.
So it's got different sugars in it,
Okay.
like glucose and lactose.
Oh, so like different food options.
Different food options.
Okay.
And it's got this other stuff called peptone,
Peptone.
which is like protein.
Okay.
So it's like a whole buffet for the bacteria.
We're giving them the full menu.
The whole 9 yards.
Okay, and so they're growing on this, and then how do we actually tell what they're doing?
Okay, so as they're eating,
Okay.
they're going to be producing waste products, right?
Right, just like us.
Just like us.
Yeah.
So those waste products can either be acid,
Okay.
alkaline, or gas.
Oh, right, gas, like
farts.
Like little bacterial farts.
Yeah, but instead of farting out loud, it gets trapped in this tube.
Okay.
So you see cracks in the agar.
Oh, that's how we know.
Or bubbles.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're looking for like color changes.
Color changes.
Cracks, bubbles.
Cracks, bubbles. And sometimes it even turns black.
Black. What?
If it makes hydrogen sulfide, it turns black.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So like, is it like really dark black or is it like...
It can be, depending on how much hydrogen sulfide it makes. But yeah, it can be like a really deep black color.
So we're like really looking for anything unusual in this tube.
Pretty much.
Oh, yeah. This is fascinating.
So you have all these indicators in the agar itself that are going to tell you what the bacteria are doing.
Okay, so it's like they're sending us signals.
They are.
Through the color.
Right.
Oh, that's so cool.
So for example, one of the indicators is phenol red.
Okay.
And phenol red.
I've heard of that.
Yeah.
Like from chemistry or something.
Yeah, it's a pH indicator.
Yeah.
So it's going to tell you how acidic or basic something is.
Okay.
So if the bacteria are fermenting glucose, they're producing acid.
Right.
And the phenol red turns yellow.
Oh, so yellow means acid.
Yellow means acid.
Okay.
Yeah, and then if it's more alkaline, it'll be more red or orange.
Okay, so we've got like this whole spectrum of colors.
We do.
That we're looking at.
We do.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then on top of that, we have gas production.
Right.
Which you can see.
The bubbles.
The bubbles, the cracks, and then you have that black precipitate.
Right.
For the hydrogen sulfide.
Okay, so we're really looking for all these different things, and then we can kind of piece together like what this bacteria is up to.
Exactly.
Wow, this is so cool.
So it's a relatively simple test to set up, but the interpretation can be a little
complicated.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's where the fun is, right?
That's where the fun is. That's where the detective work comes in.
Yeah, so it's like we're piecing together all these little clues to figure out who the culprit is.
Exactly.
In this case, the bacteria.
The bacteria, exactly.
This is so cool. All right.
Yeah.
So let's say we do this test.
Okay.
And we're looking at it, and it's like bright yellow.
Okay.
And there's some bubbles.
Okay.
What does that tell us?
So if it's bright yellow, that means that it can ferment glucose for sure. Because it's producing acid.
Right.
And the bubbles mean it's producing gas.
Okay.
So it's really going to town on that glucose.
So it's like a big sugar fan.
Big sugar fan.
Okay. And is that all we can tell from that? Or is there like more?
Well, it depends on the rest of the tube.
Okay.
So the KIA slant, it has a slant and then a butt.
Okay.
Right.
Right.
So if the butt is also yellow, then that means it can ferment lactose too.
Oh, I see. So it's like...
So it can use both.
It's like where on the slant it is tells us...
Yeah, and what color it is.
What it's eating.
What it's eating.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
So it's like if it's just the tip...
If it's just the tip...
Then it's like glucose.
It's just glucose.
If it's the whole thing.
The whole thing.
Lactose and glucose.
Lactose and glucose. Oh, that's a neat little trick.
It is. It's a very elegant test.
Okay, so we've got this test. We've got all this information we can get from it. Mm-hmm. Why do we care?
Well...
Like, why is this important?
This is important for a lot of reasons.
Okay.
So, for example, let's say you're a doctor.
Okay.
And you have a patient who comes in with an infection.
You need to figure out what bacteria is causing that infection.
Right, to know how to treat it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you can do this test, and it can help you narrow down the possibilities.
So it's like one tool in your detective kit.
Exactly.
To help you figure out what's going on.
What's going on, and then from there you can do more tests.
Okay, so it kind of narrows it down.
It narrows it down.
To help you figure out exactly what you need to do.
Exactly.
That's really cool.
Yeah, it's a very useful test.
I can see why our listener asked about this one.
Yeah.
This is really cool.
And it's not just for medicine.
Oh, is it used for other things?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, like what?
So you can use it for food safety.
Oh, yeah.
To make sure that our food is not contaminated with harmful bacteria.
Okay.
You can use it in environmental monitoring.
Okay.
So like if you're testing water samples or soil samples, you can use this test to see what kind of bacteria are present.
So it's like this test is done like behind the scenes.
It is.
All the time.
All the time.
To make sure that like everything's okay.
Pretty much, yeah, it's a workhorse.
That's wild. And I bet most people have no idea.
Probably not.
That this is even a thing.
Yeah.
Wow. That's really cool. So it's like this simple test, but it has these like really important implications.
It does.
For like our health and like our food and the environment. Mm-hmm. Wow.
It's pretty cool.
Really cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's say we're looking at this test and it's like really unexpected results.
Okay.
Like it doesn't match up with any of the things that we usually see.
Oh, interesting.
What does that mean?
That's a great question.
Like, is that bad?
Not necessarily. It just means we have to investigate further.
Oh, okay.
Right? So it could mean that we found a new species of bacteria that we've never seen before.
How cool is that?
Right.
So we're like discovering new life.
Potentially, yeah.
In our little test tube.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Or it could mean that this bacteria has some unusual metabolic pathway.
Okay, what does that mean?
So that means that it's breaking down these sugars or this peptone in a way that we haven't seen before.
Oh, so it's like...
Which is really exciting from a scientific standpoint.
It's like they're breaking the rules of how we thought things worked.
Exactly.
Wow. So
that could be like a really big deal?
It could be, yeah. Because then it's like, okay, why is this bacteria doing this? Right. What's special about it?
And could we use that for something?
Exactly.
Oh, wow.
So those are the cases where you get really excited as a scientist because it's like, okay.
There's something new.
This is new. This is different. Let's figure out what's going on.
Oh, that is so cool.
Yeah.
So even when it's unexpected, it can be a good thing.
It can be a very good thing.
That's awesome. I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've talked about like medicine. We've talked about food safety. We've talked about the environment.
What are some other ways that this kind of research, like with bacteria and their metabolism, like how else does that impact our lives?
So understanding bacterial metabolism is really important for developing new antibiotics.
Oh, okay. Why is that?
Because if we can understand how bacteria are becoming resistant to antibiotics, then we can develop new drugs that can overcome that resistance.
So it's like we have to understand how it works in order to like fight it.
To stay one step ahead of the bacteria.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. And then another thing is biofuels.
Okay, how does that work?
So some bacteria can actually produce fuels.
Like what kind of fuels?
Like ethanol or butanol.
Interesting.
So if we can understand how they do that, we can potentially engineer them to produce more fuel.
So it's like we're using the bacteria to make stuff for us.
Exactly.
That's cool.
Yep. So it's
like they're little factories.
They are.
Wow.
We're using them
to our advantage.
Okay, so we're using them to make biofuels. What else are we using them for?
So bioremediation.
Bioremediation.
Yeah.
What's that?
So that's using bacteria to clean up pollution.
Oh, wow.
So for example,
how does that work?
Some bacteria can break down.
Yeah.
Oil spills.
Oh, that's amazing.
Or pesticides.
Wow.
Or even radioactive waste.
That's incredible.
Yeah, so we can use them to clean up.
Wow. So it's like we're using their natural abilities to like fix problems that we've created.
We are.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so bacteria are very versatile.
Clearly.
This is amazing.
And we're still learning so much about them.
Right. It's like we're just scratching the surface.
Exactly.
Wow, this is really cool.
Right.
Okay, so let's say we're a listener and we're like, this is awesome.
Yeah.
I want to learn more about this.
Right.
Where would we even begin?
Well, there are a lot of great resources available online. You can check out the American Society for Microbiology website.
Okay.
They have a lot of great information for the public.
Okay.
You can also look for books and articles about microbiology.
So it's like, if you're interested in science, this is like...
It's a fascinating field.
A whole world to explore.
It is.
Wow, this is really cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've talked about the key OTSI test.
We have.
We've talked about like all these different things that we can learn from it.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that we should mention before we wrap up?
I think we covered most of it.
Okay.
But just to reiterate.
Yeah.
It's a very simple test.
Okay.
But it can tell us a lot about bacteria.
Right. It's like this elegant solution to a complex problem.
It is.
And it has all these like far-reaching implications.
It does.
That I don't think most people
probably not
would even think about. Wow, this is really cool.
It is.
I'm glad we got to dive into this one.
Me too.
All right, well, thanks so much for explaining all of that.
Of course.
This is really fascinating stuff.
Yeah, I love microbiology.
Yeah, me too.
It's so cool.
All right, well, to our listener out there, thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
Yeah, thanks for listening.
And we'll catch you next time.
See you next time.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not just about like, us nerds in the lab going, oh, cool, look at that color.
Right.
It actually has real world applications.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Like, this is all very cool, but like, why should we care?
Yeah.
Like, why does this matter?
Why does it matter?
Yeah.
So one reason is because it can actually help us identify bacteria that are causing infections.
Right. So we talked about that a little bit.
Yeah.
Like if you go to the doctor and you have an infection, they need to figure out what it is.
Exactly.
So this is one of the tools they can use.
Exactly. So it can help you differentiate between different types of bacteria based on their metabolic profile.
So it's like another clue.
Another clue.
In our detective case.
Exactly.
Right. And so then once they know what bacteria it is, then they can figure out like, okay, what antibiotic do we use? Whatever the treatment might be.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's really important for guiding treatment decisions.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And then another reason why it's important is for food safety.
Oh, right.
So we want to make sure that our food is not contaminated with harmful bacteria.
Right, like Salmonella or something.
Exactly. Okay. So this test can help us identify those bacteria.
Okay. And
then we can take steps to prevent them from making us sick.
So like if they're testing food products.
Exactly.
Or like water or something.
Yeah, any kind of food or beverage.
Okay.
Or even surfaces in a food processing plant.
Right, to make sure it's all clean.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. So it's really important for protecting public health.
Yeah, this is kind of blowing my mind that like this simple test is used for so many things.
It's one of those like fundamental microbiology techniques that has a lot of applications.
Yeah, it's like we're really seeing how like microbiology is like behind the scenes.
It is.
In our lives in all these ways that we don't even think about.
Exactly.
That's really cool.
Okay.
So we've got medicine, we've got food safety. Are there other ways that this is used, or is that kind of the main?
Well, those are two of the big ones.
Okay.
But there are other applications too.
Okay, like what?
So, for example, it can be used in environmental monitoring.
Oh.
So if you're trying to understand the microbial diversity of a particular environment, like a soil sample or water sample, you can use this test to get a sense of what kinds of bacteria are present.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
So it's like we're kind of getting a snapshot of like the microbial community.
Exactly. And that can be useful for a variety of reasons.
Like what?
So for example, if you're studying climate change,
you
might want to know how changes in temperature or precipitation are affecting microbial communities in different parts of the world.
Oh, that's interesting.
Or if you're...
Because, like, they play a role, right?
They do.
In all those ecosystems.
Yeah, they're like the base of the food chain.
Right.
So if they're not doing well...
Yeah, everything else.
Nothing else is going to do well.
Right.
So it's really important to understand how they're being affected by environmental changes.
That's a good point.
Sure.
I didn't even think about that.
Yeah.
Wow, so it's like... this one little test can tell us so much.
It can.
About like the health of the environment.
Yeah, it's a pretty powerful tool.
Wow, this is really cool. Okay, so we've got like medicine, food safety, environment. I feel like we're just scratching the surface here.
We are.
Like, what else could we use this for? What other kind of like research is being done?
Well, one area of research that's really exciting is using bacteria to develop new antibiotics. So we're facing a global antibiotic resistance crisis.
Right, I've heard about that.
Where bacteria are becoming resistant to the antibiotics that we have.
Right, so like the antibiotics aren't working as well.
Exactly.
Because the bacteria are like mutating or whatever.
Exactly, they're evolving.
Right.
And so we need to develop new antibiotics to stay ahead of them.
Okay, so how do we use the bacteria to do that?
So one way is to look for bacteria that are producing novel antibiotics.
Okay, so like bacteria that are already making antibiotics.
Exactly.
That we don't even know about yet.
Exactly.
Oh, wow.
So we can screen different bacteria to see if they're producing anything that can kill other bacteria.
Oh, that's so cool. So it's like we're using bacteria to fight bacteria.
Exactly.
That's awesome.
It's like a little microbial arms race.
I love it.
Yeah, and then another area of research is using bacteria to produce biofuels.
Oh, yeah, I've heard about that too.
Some bacteria.
Like using corn or something.
Yeah, or algae.
Okay.
Or even just like agricultural waste.
Right.
So we can take those materials and we can feed them to bacteria.
Okay.
And the bacteria will convert them into biofuels.
Oh, wow.
Which we can then use to power our cars and our homes and everything else.
So it's like we're taking something that's like waste.
Exactly.
And turning it into something useful.
Exactly. It's like recycling on a microbial level.
I love that. Okay, so biofuels, what else?
Another area that's really interesting is bioremediation.
Bioremediation, what's that?
So that's using bacteria to clean up pollution.
Oh, wow.
So, for example, some bacteria can break down oil spills.
Oh, that's amazing.
Or pesticides, or even radioactive waste.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
So it's like we're using their natural abilities
Agar.
to clean up our messes.
Yeah, exactly.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so bacteria are very versatile.
Clearly.
They can be used for a lot of different things.
That's incredible. This is like a whole new world that I didn't even know existed.
It is.
And it's all thanks to microbiology.
Exactly.
That's really cool. Okay, so we've talked about like all these different applications of this research.
Yeah.
What are some of the challenges that scientists are facing? Like what are some of the things that they're still trying to figure out?
So one of the big challenges is just the sheer diversity of bacteria.
Okay, what do you mean?
So there are millions, if not billions, of different species of bacteria.
Oh, wow.
And we've only identified a tiny fraction of them.
Really?
Yeah, so there's a lot that we still don't know.
So it's like we're just starting to understand
exactly
the tip of the iceberg?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then another challenge is that bacteria are constantly evolving.
Right. So like we talked about with the antibiotic resistance.
Exactly.
So it's like a moving target.
It is.
That we're trying to hit.
Yeah. And then another challenge is that bacteria don't always behave the way we expect them to.
Okay, what do you mean?
So they can be very finicky.
Okay.
They might grow really well in one environment
right.
and then not at all in another environment.
Oh, that's tricky.
Yeah. So it can be really challenging to study them.
So it's like we're still trying to figure out like what makes them tick.
Exactly.
Right.
And then on top of all of that, there's the challenge of funding.
Right. Because science needs money to happen.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it can be difficult to get funding for microbiology research.
Really? Why is that?
Well, part of it is just that it's a very specialized field.
Okay.
And it's not always clear what the practical applications are going to be.
Right, because it's like so much of it is still unknown.
Exactly.
Right.
So it can be hard to convince people to invest in it.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
But it seems so important.
It is incredibly important.
Right, because like we've been talking about, it affects like our health, our food, the environment.
What of it?
Like all these important things.
Yeah, it's really a fundamental science.
Right, that underpins so much of like our lives.
Yeah.
What? Okay, so we've got all these challenges, but we've also got all this amazing potential.
We do.
With microbiology.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
So what do you think the future holds?
Yeah.
Like what are some of the things that you're most excited about?
So one thing I'm really excited about is the potential for personalized medicine.
Oh, okay.
So using our understanding of the microbiome.
The microbiome.
Yeah.
Like the bacteria that live in and on us.
Exactly. So we can use that information to develop personalized treatments.
Oh, that's interesting.
For a variety of diseases.
Okay, so like how would that work?
So for example, let's say you have a particular gut bacteria.
Okay.
That's causing you to have digestive problems.
Okay.
We might be able to develop a treatment that specifically targets that bacteria without harming the rest of your gut microbiome.
Oh, that's a good point, because I know like antibiotics can kind of like wipe out everything.
Exactly. They're like a bull in a china shop.
Right.
They just kill everything.
This is more like a targeted approach.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah. And then another thing I'm really excited about is the potential for using bacteria to create new materials.
Oh, wow. Like what kind of materials?
So, for example, some bacteria can produce really strong and lightweight materials.
Oh, wow.
That could be used for things like building construction or aerospace engineering.
Wow. So it's like we're using bacteria to build things.
Exactly.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And then another thing I'm really excited about is the potential for using bacteria to create new foods.
Oh, that's interesting.
So, for example, some bacteria can produce proteins that taste just like meat.
Oh, wow. Like plant-based meat.
Exactly.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah. So there's a lot of potential there.
So it's like we're using bacteria to create a more sustainable food system.
Exactly.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So there's a lot to be excited about.
Yeah, this is really cool. I'm like, I'm so glad that we did this deep dive.
Me too.
Because I had no idea that microbiology was like this whole...
It's a whole
world of like wonder and possibility.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've talked about all this cool stuff.
We have.
About microbiology.
Yeah.
And like all the amazing things that bacteria can do.
They are amazing.
They are amazing.
I cry.
Okay, but let's go back to this test for a second.
Okay.
The Kayetsise test.
Yeah.
So we've talked about like all these different things that it can tell us. But what if we do the test?
Yeah.
And we get results that don't make sense?
Interesting.
Like, what if it doesn't match up with anything that we know?
That's a great question.
What does that mean?
Well, that means we have to do some more detective work.
Right? Okay.
It could be that we just made a mistake in the lab. That always happens.
Yeah.
Or it could be that we've stumbled upon something completely new.
Oh, that's kind of what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Like, what if it's a new species or something?
It could be.
Wow.
It could be a new species of bacteria.
That'd be so cool.
It could be a new strain of bacteria that we've never seen before. Or it could be that this bacteria is doing something really weird.
Okay.
That we just haven't observed before.
So like breaking the rules.
Breaking the rules, yeah.
Of biology as we know it.
Essentially, yeah.
Wow.
So those are the cases where it gets really exciting.
Right.
Because it's like, okay, we need to figure out what's going on here.
Yeah, this is like...
This is new. This is novel.
Big discovery.
Yeah, and it could have huge implications for science and for medicine and for all sorts of things.
So like what kind of implications are we talking about?
Well, for example, let's say we find a bacteria that can break down plastic.
Okay.
That would be huge.
That'd be huge.
Right, because plastic pollution is a huge problem.
Yeah.
And we don't really have a good way to deal with it.
So we could use the bacteria to like clean it up.
Exactly.
Wow.
Or let's say we find a bacteria that produces a new antibiotic that's effective against antibiotic-resistant bacteria.
Oh, wow. That would be amazing.
That would be a game changer. Right.
Because like we're running out of antibiotics?
We are.
And
so finding new ones is really important.
Wow.
So yeah, those are just a couple of examples.
That was incredible.
Of the potential implications.
It's like just in this one little test tube.
Yeah.
We could find solutions to some of the world's biggest problems.
Potentially, yeah.
That's amazing. Okay, so to our listener out there, if you're interested in microbiology, just know that this is a field that is like...
full of surprises.
Ripe with potential.
Yeah.
Like there's so much that we still don't know.
So much we don't know.
But like the things that we are finding out are like blowing our minds.
They really are.
Yeah, so this is definitely a field to watch.
Absolutely.
All right, well, thanks so much for explaining all of that.
Yeah, of course.
This has been fascinating.
I'm glad you enjoyed it.
I really did.
Me too.
All right, to our listener out there, thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
Yeah, thanks for listening.
And we'll catch you next time.